Okay, so our next speaker is Dr. Oscar Camara. Oscar Camara is an associate professor here at UPF, a full associate professor here at UPF. Sorry. Okay. Well, at the Department of Information and Communication Technologies. He completed his degree in telecommunications engineering in Universitat de Catalunya, and then he completed his master and PhD in image processing in Paris, in the Superior National School of Telecommunications, and then he was as a postdoctoral researcher in the King's College London, and then in the University College London for some years. And after those years abroad, he came back to Barcelona as a Ramón y Cajal postdoctoral researcher here at the TIC of the UPF. And then he has been coordinating since 2011 the FISENS, which is a research group from the TIC, and also he has been coordinating the undergraduate degree of biomedical engineering here at UPF. His main research has been focused on developing new signal and image processing and computational science methods for medical applications. Also, another field in which he has been strongly involved has been computational modeling of different organs in the human body. And today he will be presenting methodological methodologies for improving computational imaging and computational models through the validation of through its validation with control ground truth data, or through its personalization with person-specific data. So welcome, Oscar. And
thank you very much, Maya. Apologize for this moment. So welcome everyone. So a lot of you knows me, has suffered me in class, and also on this kind of type of chicken wings and cauliflowers, that for the ones that you don't know, they have some relation with your heart and the possibility of having a stroke. So as Mayra has presented, I've been around for some time, working on different aspects of computational tools, on data science, on computational modeling in the heart, in the brain also. So I'm not really a very focused researcher, which has good and bad things. I'm part of the FISENS research group, now around 60, 17 people, a lot of talented PhDs, some of them in the audience, some postdocs, etc. It's already some years since we created the group together with Bart and others. And for the ones that you don't know, FISENS is part of another umbrella, larger umbrella, that is Barcelona MedTech, that includes the different groups on biomedical engineering in this department. The groups are Gemma, Miguel Angel, Jerome, Tony, and Ralph, etc. And we touch a lot of different aspects of biomedical engineering. Some time ago, I created this kind of scheme of the things that we are doing in terms of research topics in FISENS, digital twins. Obviously, data processing these days is related to AI. And in the middle, a bit of this, and visual analytics, more related to interfaces and visualization. And in the middle, this kind of explainable or interpretable AI. Some of the research lines just to list, because I'm going to mainly talk of this particular one on fluid simulations for left atrial appendage occluder implantation, but we are also developing advanced interfaces, some in collaboration with computer graphics people, to have interactive exploration of medical data. Also, we are working on biomechanical models of brain development, which is super interesting, and deep learning techniques, more on the data side, but for challenging type of data, like for the flow, like echocardiography, like electrocardiogram signals. and going towards trying to have explainable results of these AI algorithms. And then also, I mean, for a long time, we've been involved in electrophysiological simulations of the heart, basically for image-guided ablation therapies. So I don't know what you were doing in 2017. I don't know if you remember this year. There were some shitty things like Trump appearing. For the ones that doesn't know, this is a caganer, quite an interesting tradition in Catalonia. If you don't know it, just ask the local ones. It's something quite present in Christmas here. But 6 years ago, I was here in the same place, VPH Summer School 2017, talking about the same shit or chicken wings, cauliflowers, etc. So you have the video on YouTube. Maybe you can skip and then watch the video. But there has been some differences in these 6 years in this research line. So just starting from the beginning, I mean, there's a lot of patients with atrial fibrillation these days becoming an epidemic. And atrial fibrillation is related to the possibilities of having a stroke. A thrombus can form in the heart and then go up and have a stroke. This is not super nice. And in fact, it's kind of 1/4, more or less, of strokes in the brain are related to problems in the heart, atrial fibrillation. And in fact, something quite interesting is that, at least in 2007, we were putting the 90% of the strokes generated in the heart, they are formed in the left atrial appendage, which is a particular structure in the left atria. But now we know there are recent studies that is 99%, so it's a bit more specific. So the thing is with patients with atrial fibrillation that they have risk of a stroke, the first line therapy is to give anticoagulants, the Syntron, etc. But there is a lot of patients with contraindications or that they forget to take the daily pill. And so 15 years ago, something like that, there was a new therapy that came out, that it was implanting a device, an occluder device, in this left atrial appendage that we see here, in order to avoid blood entering into the left atrial appendage and then form the thrombus. So the clinicians need to decide, the interventional cardiologists, which type of device use, which size, and where to implant it positionally. And well, you have different type of clinicians with different expertise, and things can be a bit wrong. And things that can go wrong, I mean, the morphology of this structure, it changes a lot from patient to patient, and the devices, you have a limited range of sizes and devices. So sometimes the occluder is not well positioned or is not the right size, and then they can leave some holes that they lead to peri-device leaks, so blood is still entering into the left atrial appendage, or even worse, if the occluder is not well positioned, you can have some regions outside the device where it generates a thrombus because of certain conditions there. And the clinical studies, it depends on the range of these abnormal events after implantation, but it can be quite high. And so there are some, I mean, clinicians are trying to identify which are the best configuration for the device to avoid these problems, right? Like, for instance, covering this part, ensure that this part, which is called the pulmonary ridge, is covered. So in 2016, we got lucky and we got a national project that we call Computational, and the idea was to really develop new computational tools to characterize the morphology of the left atria and the left atrial appendages, and also to run fluid simulations to investigate the blood flow patterns in the left atria, because imaging cannot give you this information in 4D. And in fact, this came because we were working at the time on cerebral aneurysms, and the computational tools were quite similar, so we tried to adapt them. So again, this was some of the questions that we wanted to answer in 2017, again, around the morphological characterization. Can we build correspondences and atlases of these so variable anatomical structures? Can we relate the shape parameters with the haemodynamics and with thrombus formation? and what is the role of the left atrial appendage in the whole cardiovascular system of the haemodynamics, or to close the left atrial appendage, and which parameters are more important for thrombus formation, right? Again, the jackpot, and it's still valid, is that can we predict what is going to happen to a patient when we implant, and can we tailor the therapy or the drug therapy after this type of implantations. So it was funny to see all these results from 6 years ago. We had an initial collaboration with ALS, a hospital in Belgium, and we got some 3D rotational angiography images, around 37. So we started to segment and generate, segment manually and generate these 3D visualizations. We could obtain some initial patient-specific boundary conditions in terms of pressure. There were problems to get data locally here in hospital clinic, but we came out with collaborations from ALS just to start having all these geometries to play with and to start generating fluid simulations and to characterize. You can see also this kind of different categories that the clinician use to be characterized in a qualitative way, the shapes, cactus, chicken wing, windsock, cauliflower, but in the end, it's good to see the high variability. So we have started computing volumes, computing the orifice between the left atrial appendage and the cavity of the left atria, diameters. We initiated some fractal analysis that went nowhere, but these were the initial simple characterization. We developed a whole pipeline for patient-specific fluid simulations of the left atria using a lot of different open source softwares that most of them we are still using, like Mesh Mixer, Mesh Lab, etc., and obviously ParaView. And we were starting playing with the different CFD solvers, ANSYS or ALIA or OpenFOAM, etc. So this was the work of Guadalupe, a master's student that started this, and we wanted to have experiments where we were changing only one parameter in the simulations. And obviously the geometry is so different. So what we decided, okay, let's work on an ideal left atrial cavity, like an oval, and then what we will change, we will just put there different left atrial appendages, right? So very simple, idealistic, not super realistic, but it was quite useful for the initial results. We were using very simplified boundary conditions, some velocities in the pulmonary veins that we extract from literature, some pressures in the mitral valve that it was very different from systole and diastole, like a wall, or just a fixed pressure in the mitral valve, and kind of a standard other boundary conditions, Newtonian incompressible fluid, but also quite important, we assume the wall of the left atria rigid. So this was some of the initial simulations. Some of the guys in the audience will remember, maybe. So a lot of colors, but is this realistic? We don't know. I mean, we can see that the flow is going from the pulmonary veins to the cavity and then going through the mitral valve to the left ventricle. The clinicians was one of the first times watching this type of movies, so they were quite interested. We started playing with some more realistic geometries and having different types of visualizations, visualizing vorticities, Reynolds numbers, streamlines, etc., but really initial. And then we started doing a bit of statistical analysis. 2017, still machine learning, AI was a bit like, okay, something is happening, but not really being used a lot. And we started to compute different geometrical parameters and hemodynamic parameters and trying to integrate and compare, right? And we had at the time, okay, let's do analysis on one different type of, or one example of the different categories of shape morphology. And we started to really see interesting things and doing some clustering. And even from this initial simple analysis, we started to see things that we didn't expect, like the influence of the pulmonary veins, like the inlets of the left atria, in terms of the configuration. If you have large pulmonary veins here or there, or even the number. So this was something that wasn't reported in the literature, and it gave us, okay, maybe we are on the right track even with these simple geometries. Let's see what is happening and start to analyze the influence of these different morphologies on the hemodynamics. Also, it was very important to realize the mitral valve velocities quite different, or that it was important to get this information from patients, but in the end, it was a bit independent on the left atrial characteristics. And also we needed more or better indices to characterize the 40 flow patterns rather than just one single velocity at one point and a space, okay? Then vortices, well, always difficult to characterize, but we were seeing differences depending on the geometries, on the type of left atrial appendages. And well, obviously this kind of cactus cauliflower is a bit nonsense, too subjective type of morphological characterization. So as we have been always doing here at UPF, we torture our biomedical engineering students with our research, and well, I mean, that's, I think, is a good type of torture. They help us a lot, and they see well, the work that we are doing in terms of research, and this was the work of the students, some students in the subject, the third year subject of modeling of organs and systems, where we ask, okay, well, just generate different CAD models of the different type of occluders, and they did a fantastic job, a really, really nice job that then we used to, let's say, virtually deployed these CAD models into the geometries and then run fluid simulations, and was a fantastic initial work out of it. And this was the future work in 2007. We needed to process the 40 cases we had and to go to more automatic morphological characterization, obviously add the motion into the left atrial wall, and I start doing 3D printing for validation purposes, and also start creating models of thrombus formation. We were lucky enough to convince the ministry to get us more funding after the initial compilao. Then it was VIDAA, and we needed to put more keywords and fancy words at that time, so we put virtual and augmented reality, in silico planning, interactive tools, training, and this kind of things, multi-physics simulations, basically for doing the same thing. We were lucky to have the chicken wing king that he did the PhD and finished, Dr. Mill, and he helped a lot to really streamline the pipeline to create patient-specific fluid simulations of the left atria. At the beginning, it was taking a lot of time to process one case, and thanks to the work of Jordi and others, we could really start processing a lot of cases. And so one of the initial works of Jordi, I hope it works, was to get data of patients that got this device-related thrombus, so a thrombus outside the device, and we could have CT images before the implantation and after the implantation. So what Jordi did in this particular case, it was, okay, let's run simulations, let's see where the device was, where the device was implanted, and after this, I hope it should work. Why is it not working? Hello? Usually this video works. We are showing this every time. Yeah, in this case, the occluder was implanted here, and it was not optimal. This patient had a thrombus every time the anticoagulants were removed. And so with simulations, usually we could see that there is one region, you can see it here, one region with a high risk of thrombus formation. Basically, this is a region with low velocities and complex flow. And then what Jordi did, it was to implant virtually the device in a more optimal position. And you could see the flow, I don't know what's going on here, the flow was going more laminar and without these regions of low flow, blood flow velocities and complex flow. So this was a good initial proof of concept that the simulations could predict the risk of this thrombus formation and to find better and more optimal device configurations. So Jordi did this study in 6 cases, and the simulations, some indices, in silico indices from the simulations, could really predict well if the patient was going to have a DRT with this sort of implantation, basically looking at lower velocities around the device under a certain threshold and complex flow. Another thing that Jordi did, thanks to COVID and having all this pipeline, he was bored during COVID at home, so he took 130 cases, run the simulations. It was the largest and maybe even the largest set of fluid simulations done in history of the left atria. And then he was trying to analyze 40 flow patterns of these 130 cases. These are just snapshots. These things move. These are streamlines. So try to look at this in 130 cases over time. Okay, it was hard. But what it was super interesting in this, with the help of some collaborators in INRIA, he managed to characterize a bit some of the pulmonary vein configurations, number of pulmonary veins, the angles of the pulmonary veins, and relate to the difference in the blood flow patterns. It's super, I mean, logical, right? But nobody was looking into this, on the influence of this inlet into the blood flow pattern. And we are starting to see some relation with the formation of thrombus in some cases, which is super nice. But I was kind of asked, I think, to see and to talk a bit more on the translation of all this research. No? So we had all these scientific studies, but how could we help clinicians really to save you from a stroke? And some years ago, more than 6 already with Bart, we kind of made, I think, a wise decision, and it was just to start incorporating software developers in our research group, and they help us a lot to set up an environment, an ecosystem that is called Rocket, that it helps us to develop web-based applications tailored for different type of clinical questions and connected with the cloud, where you can run Dockers and have kind of experiments run in the cloud, but also with the standardized databases, all using open source softwares and kind of from the front end using whatever, Meteor, JavaScript, etc., to the back end using Kubernetes, etc. And this allowed us to go beyond the research that we were doing. So we end up having visualization tools in the web of whatever type of data, and nowadays there is a lot of different use case, what the developers call in production, from different applications like an image analysis platform, basically for echocardiography, but also some things on lung image processing, fetal applications, on electrophysiology. There is one hospital in the south of Spain, 4 different cardiology services using this kind of rocket electrophysiology and also others. And more important for this, Ainhoa Aguado, while she was doing the TFG and the master here with us, and then she joined until now as a software developer, she developed VIDAA. That is called the virtual implantation of devices in the left atrial appendage, where basically you can introduce a medical image, you segment it, then there is a morphological characterization of the left atrial appendage, and the user can virtually implant whatever type of device. There are some recommendations, and then helps on the medical decisions, and obviously there is also the fluid simulations next to it. So this is another video. I hope it works. But it's something super strange. What is happening with the videos? That they stop at some point. I don't know why. Okay, I won't do anything. No, it stops. Okay, let me see if I can advance. So, oh my God. So let's go. This is the 3D left atria that the user can see. It can check the CT images with the device implanted. Also, we can see here, and this is the morphological characterization with the different diameters, and then the user can really understand well where is the optimal position of the occluder where it needs to be implanted. Let me see if I can advance. Something super strange. So this is with the occluder virtually implanted and is interactive. So the user can really change the device and put whatever she thinks appropriate. And I hope it can be seen that we have also lately added something for the deployment, so the compression of the left atrial appendage to predict how it's going to stay after the implantation. So with all this, what we do, and we process cases from hospitals, we have now a pipeline to generate a report out of the simulations to show to the, together with the platform, to show to the clinician before the implantation so that the clinician can check different configurations and can check well, the results of the simulations and make a decision. So all this we have ported also to virtual reality and augmented reality, a bit for fun, well, just to test this kind of headsets. Obviously, next year, hopefully, we'll take the Vision Pro from Apple just to check. But I mean, it's something quite interesting to visualize the geometry with these glasses. Is something really different. The clinicians that have tested, they are quite surprised. And when you look inside the cavity, you have interesting information. Obviously, to put this in the hospital is not obvious, but what is definitely an interesting use case is for training. For training clinicians and also maybe in combination with 3D printing. So companies are quite interested in these tools for training and as part of the simulators that they have. And also for dissemination is super cool. I mean, you bring this to a conference, everyone wants to try it. Another thing, other kind of advanced visualizations, we are working on cinematic rendering directly from the CT scan to create this kind of high-resolution visualizations with device or without device, etc. So we have also tried to quantify the added value of these techniques for the medical decisions related to the occluders. And we brought several clinicians here to test it and to compare with 3D printing, and we have done some analysis. So, I mean, the overall thought is that they are cool, they are interesting, some more than others, but that definitely they will be integrated in one part or the other of the clinical workflow at some point. So, what about the fluid simulations? Are they ready to be used really in a clinical context? So the problem is that when you look at the literature on this kind of left atrial fluid simulations, Jordi prepared this table. So, well, the thing is that everyone is using different boundary conditions, different mesh resolution, different everything, different kind of modeling configurations. And without a benchmark data to compare is quite difficult. So there is definitely a lack of rigorous verification, validation, and uncertainty quantification processes that we have here these days a bit. And this is what is needed to build the credibility of this type of simulations to be used as part of the regulatory processes, etc. So some years ago, ASME created these VMV 40 guidelines that Gunnar mentioned yesterday also. But the thing is, at the beginning is you were asking to a modeler, ASME, ACME, I mean, no one knew what was that. But basically, it's a really nice scheme that they are, you need to answer questions that, again, they are just super logical. It's like, for what you want the simulations, and to have again, verification and validation experiments in a rigorous way. The thing is that, yeah, we should supposed to do this as modelers, right? Verification, validation, uncertainty quantification. But well, I mean, but to me more important is that you need to define a question of interest, something very specific. That what is the question that your simulations needs to answer? And also the context of use. Who is going to use these simulations? And also the consequences if the simulations go wrong. So I'm not going into detail over all the definitions. I guess that verifications, validations, you more or less know. But again, it's this question of interest what is key for me. And it takes time to really define it. So I'll skip these definitions of verification, validation, and certainty quantification. But again, this is a less nice figure than the one that Gunnar showed yesterday, but about this context of use and the relation with the validation points. You need to be careful on what you validate in which area or which ranges of your model, and just to define the validity of your simulations. So we joined a European project a couple of years ago where the SynCardio test, where the main idea was to work towards this build of credibility of this type of simulations with different use cases, with companies or the different stakeholders, companies, hospitals, academic centers, and also regulatory agencies as part of the project. And we are in charge of the use case on the left atrial appendage occluders, where we want to just run the simulations that they are reliable, to improve patient selection, optimization of the device settings, and predict treatment response. I want to show you the question of interest that we agreed upon between the companies, the clinicians, etc. It took us months to come up with this question. And it's a very particular one that is, if we cover this pulmonary reach with a device, one type of device or the other, are we going to have low blood simulations around the device that could lead to DRT? So this is our question of interest. So we have defined different quantities of interest, what we are going to get out of the simulations, the metric we are going to use, and we are lucky to have in the project access to open source softwares and commercial softwares. And it's interesting to use both because it's like McDonald's and MasterChef, right? So the commercial, I mean, it's a bit opaque, a black thingy. You don't know what is going on, but you know that you will have something kind of standard and kind of always the same quality. With kind of the open source, you have a lot of freedom, you can change everything, but obviously it takes expertise, it's less robust, and you can go totally wrong. So, I mean, it's not bad to combine both things. So, as part of this validation and verification studies, we are comparing simulations on the same data with the two solvers. Obviously, verification of a commercial software is already done. They need to do it as a commercial software, so this helps. But for others, open source, you need to start using, I mean, making use of the benchmarks that they are there in the community, like with analytical solutions, like this typical one, and then run simulations with different type of parameters and see if you obtain, when you obtain differences and depending on which parameters. But we are also obviously running this verification and validation studies in real left atrial geometries. And I'm not going to bother you about results, but we are changing a lot of parameters. I mean, spatial, temporal resolution, number of cardiac beats, type of numerical solvers, and coming up with all these massive amounts of data and results that takes time to understand, but that they are very good for the community. If someone starts working on this, they can come up with these works and don't start from scratch. Conclusions, we've seen that you need a certain resolution, spatial and temporal resolution, but the spatial resolution is more important. Kind of, if possible, having meshes of more than 10 million elements is kind of robust numerically. Another thing is that if you can do this for a lot of patients. and that you need to use more than one metric for the verification and validation. So these are more results on the bit convergence, etc. Something very important that we did comparing to 2017 was to include left atrial wall dynamics, and this is quite nice because we could obtain these dynamics of the movement from dynamic CTs, so real patients, for healthy controls or atrial fibrillation. And when you include this in the simulations, obviously there are differences. And when you have rigid walls, you overestimate the risk of thrombus formation that becomes not realistic. So again, we are testing Newtonian versus non-Newtonian, other different type of parameters. This type of exercise can be infinite. I mean, it can take years and years and years. You always have a new experiment to test. So just talking a bit about which data we use to validate, to generate ground truth, to validate these experiments. We are working with the MIT where we process one dynamic CT, we segment, we compute the deformation, we send it to the MIT, they print it in 3D in flexible materials, and they impose this deformation field from the image with some kind of actuators that they include. You will see it in a second. And so this is the deformation in color that we send them. In black is what they impose in the actuators. And this is the type of phantoms that you see with these actuators. What is really nice is that they can also put imaging, echo, for the validation. So we are starting to process these results from the in vitro phantoms. We are also getting access to 4D flow data of the left atria, which is brilliant data, but really in its infancy, in particular for the left atria. So Xavi Morales, PhD in our group, has been working on the processing of this data, on the segmentation, and creating the meshes from this, generating pseudo-Doppler type of images together with BAR also to really understand if this type of data help us to better understand the function of the left atria. And we are starting also, with help of master students, obviously, to compare the fluid simulations with this 4D flow. Xavi is also working on the acceleration of these simulations with machine learning, using geometrical deep learning or the new pins or deep nets, the last things. So these are the things that we are testing right now. Also, Martin, another PhD student in sim cardiotest, is really going beyond the initial statistical analysis between morphological hemodynamic parameters and using advanced tools like multiple kernel learning or supervised clustering to identify if the data itself can create and can find clusters in relation with the stroke risk, and it's the case. So we are quite excited about these results. And let me show you one real case that we have processed recently. So Carlos, another PhD in the group working on this, now we have the whole pipeline and we can get an image and then start setting up different device configuration, different type of devices, different positions, etc., and do the analysis out of it. So some weeks ago, there was a conference in Barcelona, Interventional Cardiology, and they asked us to process one case that they wanted to show you. These live cases, they do the intervention during the conference, and it's broadcast, so everyone is looking at the intervention. So what Carlos and the others did, they took the geometry, segmented, and they did this kind of, they used VIDAA, they used this deployment of different devices, and came up with a report. So what it was interesting is that there were two interventional cardiologists having doubt about to put a kind of one device of size 24 in a distal position or size 26 in a proximal position. And there was one that was saying, okay, maybe it's better to put like the 24 in the distal position. But the other said, have you look at the simulations? Would you look at the simulations? This kind of represents, let's say, the amount of particles and could be related to the risk of thrombus formation. More particles, more risk. So when they saw the simulation, they said, okay, maybe we should go for this one, right? And they went for this one, and things went quite well. When you look at the flow patterns, you see that With the distal smaller, you have these regions here that are not ideal and that they could lead to thrombus formation. And when you look at the other one, the flow is more laminar. So again, processing one case is okay, but what about 200 cases, right? So this is something that happens to us a lot. I mean, Ethel, a good friend and collaborator, sent us an email, hey, I have really translated, obviously it's completely different, but it's like, can you process this new case with your staff in 2 days? And well, it's just for a new fellow, I want to convince him to process the next 200 cases with your platform. And he needs a training session with you and help with doubt. And this happens to us a lot. So this is not sustainable in an academic environment, right? So that's why people in the group, they have started this VIR test that is kind of a spin-off of our group. But then to create this spin-off is hard. I mean, you have to do a lot of work. And a lot of work you need to apply, you need to learn about what is to create a company, right? And just, for instance, this is something out of a kind of entrepreneurship program. We got a collaboration with this company, Genesis Biomed, and they created some slides with more than 82 or 85 slides with a summary of everything related to this VIR test company. The problem, the product, market analysis, competitors analysis, deals analysis, the IP strategy, regulatory, the team, business model, financial plan. You need to do all this in a very complete way in order to start a company. I don't want to feel that to discourage you to do this. It's super good, we need it, but it's hard. And these are some slides. Okay, the product, yeah, it's a bit of bullshitting, but in a complete bullshit way. You need to define the uses of your platform, for what. You need to analyze the competitors and convince the investors and everyone that you have unique selling points comparing to the others. Obviously, in these tables, the others always have some negative things and yours is always positive, right? Independent of what you do, right? You need to define what is the TRL, how mature is your technology for going to the market. And all this terminology, you need to learn it. You need to analyze the market. I mean, this is hard. You need to go and read a lot. Regulatory classes. I mean, your product, in which regulatory class is? It's class 2, A, B, whatever, and it has a lot of consequences for the regulations. The IP strategy. Can you patent? Can you brand or not? Trade secrets. You need to define the structure of your company, CEO, CTO, C whatever O, you need to find a lot of woes, right? And in our case, we are very lucky because in order to do this, you need to have the right people at the right time. And this is very difficult. This is sometimes almost a miracle because sometimes you have the right people, but it's not the right time. Or when it's the right time, you don't have the right people, right? And in this case, we have two crazy guys, or more, or three, like Jordi, Andy, and Ainhoa, and the help of a lot of people that is going to make it happen, or at least try. And even just asking AI to do super cool logos, so that's not bad. I saw this recently. But you need money for this. I mean, these people need a salary, right? So we were lucky to have, over the years, successful projects for research, but also lately on tech transfer. And in fact, it has been quite nice, very amount of money, really very small amount of money, but just you get access to investors, mentoring, lawyers, etc. And in fact, we knew at the beginning of the session that we got a new one, so that's good. And in total has been around 1.6 million euros from 2016. And again, life is not so easy. I mean, we got a lot of failed submissions. In order to get this, you can multiply by 3 or 4 the number of submitted projects. In terms of scientific contributions, not too bad. I mean, several journal publications, conference, 1 complete PhD, a lot of them ongoing, more than 25 theses of undergraduate and master students. That's quite a lot. And again, hundreds of biomedical engineering students at UPF, torture, becoming experts of left atrial appendage. Probably none other biomedical engineering student in the world know more than them. And a lot of traveling and fun, going to conferences, etc. So that's good. So in terms of the future, but obviously we need more money. So we keep on asking for resources to continue this journey. And we are waiting for the new Computational. This time it will be called Universitat. And I put here like fingers crossed by DALI. It's very funny to see that they don't manage well their fingers, this generative AI. But the thing is that we promise that we are going to explore generative AI for the different contexts with left atrial appendage, and to accelerate fluid simulations and go into more interactive visual interfaces and robust clinical recommendations. Obviously, I put ChatGPT. I don't know for what, but we'll see over the years. Things are changing a lot. Now we got lucky to get a collaboration with Oracle in their Oracle Research program, and we are seeing simulations 17 times faster. So going from 17 hours to 50 minutes for a simulation, and this is changing a lot. But ANSYS is saying that their new reduced order models for fluid simulations will be 100 faster. So maybe it's not so crazy to think that in the next 5 years we could go, depending on the simulation settings, to real-time fluid simulations. And this will be crazy. It will open up a lot of new ways to interact with interfaces and to have new applications there. So we are lucky to have good collaborators asking for money and including us as part of that. This is a Danish project that is called Artichoke. Don't ask for why. But a lot of nice people working also on a stroke and related to the left atrial appendage and also heart failure. We have submitted another European project with a lot of partners from the Netherlands, Italy, etc. that is more related to stroke. It's more kind of holistic. In this call, they ask for multi-organ. So a lot of people were coming from the neurology side for a stroke. So they call me just to complete a bit with the stroke related to the heart. So we'll do things trying to combine a bit the heart and the brain. And then, well, just to wrap up, I mean, all this verification, validation, and certainty, I mean, it's not super exciting sometimes, and as I said, it can be endless, but it's really needed. It can be difficult to publish, and not really like, oh, a new model. No, just running a lot of simulations. But really, you need this to prove that the simulations are robust, and just to convince the industry and the clinicians that they can use them, right? In any way, this is valid not only for computational modeling. For AI, it's exactly the same. You need to understand for what is being used, and you need to show the robustness and to validate, right? And in fact, all these GDPR and manifestos of AI, explainable AI, is going towards the same direction. Again, use, if you can, open source and commercial softwares, and it's very important to work together as a community and benchmark the different solutions on the same data. For us, the more methodological challenges that we have is really to streamline even more the patient-specific building of the meshes, what to do when it's difficult to get patient-specific boundary conditions like the movement of the wall or pressure or velocities in the mitral inlet, outlet. These computational times for the translation, if you need to process a lot of cases, the need of certain good computational infrastructure, and again, standards, benchmark, VMVU key. The sharing of data is becoming quite difficult, how to deal with it, the integration with machine learning and these reduced order models, and again, working together with people, etc. So, what's going on? Doesn't work anymore. So this is the gang of SIM cardiotest, quite a few people, international. This was the acknowledgements in 2017. So this was Barcelona MedTech in 2017. When you have analysis in 6 years, all these people disappear. There was one movement up of Jerome, but I mean, all these people disappear. But don't worry, Barcelona MedTech has a very good health. We are more people, in fact, but I couldn't put all the pictures. I mean, we are around 80, 90 people, so a lot of very good people in here. And in fact, I put this also in 2017. My daughter was born a few months before, and this was yesterday. So when you look, it's the same crappy black metal t-shirt, but, well, a bit grown up, huh? I mean, 6 years is a lot of time. So thank you for your attention.
So thank you, Oscar, for this interesting presentation and funny presentation. So now we have time for questions. Do you have any? I don't know. Okay.
Hi, that's a huge amount of stuff to absorb you gave us there. But towards the end, I think you mentioned using AI methods or machine learning to speed up numerical solutions. How accurate? I mean, you're reducing the order of the model for that to work. I mean, how accurate are they, and how trustworthy are the solutions you get from the speed up? I mean, it would be nice to do what you suggest, but we tried it with ODEs, and they weren't very accurate at all, and the speed up wasn't sufficient to warrant.
Yeah, but again, it depends on the question that you need to answer, right? The thing is that when we were doing this verification and validation analysis, I mean, our collaborators in Norway, in Simula, they are quite, I mean, strict in terms of numerical, and they came up, okay, you need 10 million elements, and you need at least 10 to 20 cardiac beats, and you need, that number or this time step to have numerically robust simulations. But one simulation of this could easily take 4 days, 5 days, even 1 week, depending on the configuration. So this is not practical. When you have a clinician telling, hey, I would like to have the result in 2 days, right? And the thing is that when we have one of these cases that you need to have the solution in a fast way, and you run only 2 cardiac beats, and maybe only 1 million element, and it gives you already good information about the pattern, maybe it's not super numerically robust, but you already identify something, you see differences when you change the configuration. Is that enough? But maybe yes, just to have an overall idea. Maybe the velocity, the blood flow velocities, if you analyze them, they won't be super stable. Maybe it's a question of changing the threshold if you compute the differences. And I think the same will happen with reduced order models. It will depend on which is the type of questions. I mean, Xavi is, I don't know if he's around, but he is testing these pins or this deep O-net. We need to validate the accuracy of this method as we are doing for the computational models, and we are not there yet. I mean,
one other thing, it seems like it's very common, it's a generic problem, right, solving this kind of system, whether there's a call for dedicated hardware. I was involved in a project to develop chip-based hardware that could simulate chemical networks at high speed using analog electronics. And maybe there's a case for developing, very specialized hardware that can run these things in real time for you and quite accurate too.
I have no idea.
That would be a very advanced project, though. But
yeah, but that would be fantastic.
It would, yeah.
That would be fantastic. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Maybe now? Yes, okay. Very good. Thank you for a very nice presentation. Very interesting. Lots of overlaps to what we do. And one thing that we have tried to do in Linköping is to compare CT scans where you can see the anatomy and the movements with 4D flow MRI. And then you use the CT to sort of parameterize the model and do the simulations, and then compare those simulations with the 4D flow measurements of the corresponding flows in this sort of very system. And one of the sort of methodological challenges we have encountered is how to compare three-dimensional moving images with each other, because it's not just voxel by voxel comparison. You somehow need to do it on a more clever way. I guess you had similar type of situations. How are you tackling that?
Well, it's an unsolved problem. I mean, to really compare 4D data is challenging. You need to maybe identify, again, you need to identify which are the more relevant metrics for the question you want to answer, right? Do you want to focus only on certain frames, diastole and systole? Well, it depends on what you're looking at, right? But what I think is that to do kind of a point-by-point analysis is a bit meaningless, right? Because of the resolution, different resolution noise you have. So I guess you need to do kind of regional analysis and trying to be quantitative, right? But we need to work on it, and we are starting to try to find clusters of blood flow patterns of the streamlines, right? If you manage to get this, that would be super helpful, because we saw this in the study of the different pulmonary vein configurations, right? Like, you see qualitatively that the patterns are different. You see that the flow from the left and the right pulmonary veins, they crash, the collision point is upper or down in the left atria. But how to quantify this?
Exactly.
You need to have a model or an average of these streamlines coming from every pulmonary vein with certain variation, and then try to identify these points of collision, integration of velocities over a certain area, and also, in particular for the occluder devices, quite important what's happening around the device.
Yeah, and here I didn't understand. Can you do 4D flow before and after you operate this in? Okay.
We have 5 cases that are quite unique. We have 4D flow before and after the implantation. Usually a bit like not a lot of the device, but they managed to do it here in Hospital Clinic, and we are just processing these 5 cases.
Because that would be like the core validation, so to say, of your simulations.
Yeah, but I mean, not easy. Not easy because the limited resolution, spatiotemporal resolution of the 4D flow MRI data, you cannot see very well the device. Even for the visualization, it's a bit so-so, right? And on the other hand, you have the CFD simulation, the fluid simulation on the CT space. Yeah. So to some extent, you need to register. Well, I mean, we'll see how it goes, but it's going towards the right direction. Okay,
but that comparison, because I was sort of looking for that comparison.
No, I haven't included because we are going to submit it hopefully in 1 month, and I don't like the results so far. Okay, I mean it's a lot of colors, and I don't see shit there. I mean it just, we need to put there the device to really. It's just like a lot of colors floating, etc. And I mean you cannot see a lot of things.
Which comes back to the comparison question again. Yeah. Exactly. Okay. Very cool. Thanks.
So, anyone? There?
Yeah, Oscar, well, thank you very much for the excellent talk. I don't know if you will be able to answer if it's part of secrecy related to the company, but I'm wondering, so whether you're considering, so in VIDAA test, so to incorporate finite element solver, if it will be your own based on free software, or if you will rely with commercial solutions. I'm asking that because we were talking, the first talk with Herbert, about the problem of changes with the versions, so results might be different from version to version. And you were talking about the acceleration through Chiavi's work, neural networks. I was thinking that's also a way to free yourself from this problem of changing versions when you depend from external solvers. I don't know if you can comment on that.
I mean, the use of a commercial software helps a lot commercially, because let's say you have a certain trust already there. And as part of the certification, the regulation, there are a lot of things already covered that you don't need to care about. Then it limits you a lot on the things that you can do. And we've seen this over the years. With a certain commercial solver, you want to change some things and you cannot. It's a black box, even if you have certain support from the company. So I think in the end, it's good to have the two of them and try some things where you have more flexibility and see if they are important. And if they are important, try to manage to integrate this into the commercial software, or even using a different one. And obviously, I mean, an open source software, I mean, there are fantastic initiatives on fluid solvers. I mean, you have OpenFoam, you have Phoenix, etc. But obviously, I mean, it lacks a bit of robustness. It depends a lot on the community. Some are very reactive or not. But I think the good thing is to combine both of them. Commercially, again, I mean, you need to be ready to pay the license. But I think it's just fair thing. I mean, I think it's safer to say that. Unless you develop your solver, that we will never do. I mean, we don't know. I mean, we are not good on this. But you see more and more research groups developing their solver and then having another hat like the commercial version of the solver for commercial interest that is super valid and people, if it's very good, why not?
Okay, thanks again, Oscar, for the presentation.
See you in 2030. No? No, 29.